Life's got a funny way of kicking you when you're down, or at least that's how it felt for me, Monica. I was just a regular 25-year-old, dealing with the usual mess of a life that seemed to spiral out of control more often than not. My days were filled with the mundane tasks of a job that was as uninspiring as watching paint dry, and my nights? Well, they were spent arguing with Jake, my boyfriend of 3 years. Jake was complicated. On good days, he was the guy who'd make you laugh until your stomach hurt. On bad days, he was the master of cold shoulders and harsh words. Our relationship was hanging by a thread, frayed and worn from too many fights about things neither of us would remember the next day. One particularly drab Thursday evening, I found myself sitting across from Jake at our usual spot, a dingy diner that had seen better days. The air was thick with the smell of grease and stale coffee, a fitting backdrop for yet another round of our endless bickering. "Why do you always have to be so damn difficult, Monica?" Jake snapped, his patience wearing thin. "Me? Difficult? You're the one who's impossible to talk to," I retorted, my voice rising in frustration. The conversation went round and round, like a merry-go-round that had lost its charm. It was always the same issues, the same arguments. Money, commitment, the future, you name it, we fought about it. Our words were like daggers, each one sharper and more hurtful than the last. As we left the diner, the cold night air did nothing to cool our tempers. The walk home was silent, each of us stewing in our own anger. The tension was palpable, a thick fog that refused to lift. Once we were back at our cramped apartment, the silence continued. It was as if we had run out of words, the bitterness of our argument leaving us both exhausted and defeated. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, a relentless reminder of the time we were wasting. Lying in bed that night, I couldn't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Was this what the rest of my life would look like? Endless fights with a man who seemed more like a stranger with each passing day. The thought was suffocating, a heavy weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. It was in that moment of despair that I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. Something had to change. Little did I know, the universe had already set in motion events that would change my life in ways I could never have imagined. But for now, I drifted off to sleep, the storm clouds of my life gathering on the horizon, waiting to burst open. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, tragedy struck. My parents and I were involved in a horrific car accident. It happened so fast, one moment we were talking and laughing, the next everything was chaos and pain. When I woke up in the hospital, the world as I knew it had crumbled. My parents were gone, and I was left alone with a damaged spine and legs that wouldn't move. I couldn't see a future for myself. My life, as I knew it, was over. Lying in the sterile white of my hospital room, I was drowning in thoughts that maybe, just maybe, my life as I knew it was done for. The doctors, with their carefully neutral faces, told me that my road to recovery would be long, maybe never-ending. Rehabilitation will be a significant journey, they said, their voices a mix of professional detachment and pity. But what I heard in their silence was a louder, scarier message. They didn't want to give me false hope. It was during one of those countless, blurred days filled with silent despair that Jake walked into my room, his parents trailing behind him. They had that look people get when they're trying to be strong for someone else, their smiles a bit too tight, eyes a tad too bright. Jake came to the side of my bed, and for a moment, he just looked at me. I saw something in his eyes then, a determination I hadn't noticed before. It scared me a bit, that intensity, because what could he possibly say to make this situation any less of a nightmare? "Monica," he began, and his voice cracked like he was fighting back emotions too big for him. "I know this is probably the worst timing, and I know you're going through hell right now. But I can't pretend anymore. I can't act like what I feel for you isn't the most real thing I've ever felt in my life." His words hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Then, before I could even process what he was saying, Jake did something completely crazy. He got down on one knee right there on the cold, hard floor of my hospital room. "I love you, Monica. I love you more than I've ever loved anything or anyone in my life. Marry me." Let me take care of you. Let me be the one by your side, through all of this and whatever comes next." His parents, standing just a little behind him, had tears in their eyes. His mom, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, nodded at me, as if encouraging me to say yes. His dad, a man of few words, just placed a supportive hand on Jake's shoulder, a silent show of approval. I was speechless, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, love, uncertainty, hope, they all battled within me. But looking into Jake's eyes, seeing the raw honesty there, something in me just unlocked. "Yes," I whispered, the word barely audible. "Yes, I'll marry you." The relief and joy on Jake's face were like a sunrise after the darkest night. His parents came closer, both of them assuring me, "We're going to take care of you, dear, as if you were our own daughter. Your family now." The wedding itself was nothing like I had ever imagined my wedding would be. It was small, intimate, with only the closest of our relatives and friends. I was in my wheelchair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and happiness, a bizarre cocktail of emotions. But when I saw the faces of those who came, saw their genuine smiles and teary eyes, I knew this was right. This was real. Despite the unorthodox circumstances, that day was a blur of love, a testament to something I wasn't sure I believed in anymore: hope. Jake and I, hand in hand, faced our small audience, our vows more than just words, they were promises, a bridge over the uncertainty of my recovery and our future. And as we sealed those vows with a kiss, I allowed myself to believe, maybe for the first time since the accident, that life wasn't over. It was just taking a route I hadn't planned on, a route I wouldn't have to navigate alone. After Jake and I got married, we moved into the big, fancy house my parents left me. It was already fixed up for someone in a wheelchair, with handrails everywhere and special stuff in the bathroom to help me take a shower or a bath. At first, Jake seemed all caring and helpful, like he was really gonna stand by me through thick and thin. But that changed faster than I expected. Not long after we moved in, Jake quit his job. He said it was 'cause he needed to take care of me, but honestly, I wasn't seeing much of this so-called care. His excuse was that we didn't need to worry about money 'cause of the inheritance I got from my parents. According to him, that meant he didn't need to work anymore. But here's the kicker: I ended up doing most stuff by myself. Cooking, trying to clean up as best as I could, struggling to take a bath, it was all on me. Meanwhile, Jake spent his days glued to his computer screen, playing games, or hanging out with his buddies at some bar. He'd come home late, usually drunk, and then he'd start on me, calling me a burden and whatnot. It wasn't just Jake either. His parents, who used to be all sweet and caring before we got married, flipped a switch too. They'd come over, and I'd catch them giving me these looks of disgust when they thought I wasn't paying attention. It was like they saw me as some kind of mistake their son had made. One day, I had enough and confronted Jake about it. I was struggling to make a simple meal in the kitchen, and he just waltzed in, looking for something to snack on. "Can't believe you're just lounging around all day while I bust my ass trying to do basic stuff," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. Jake just rolled his eyes, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Oh, come on, Monica. You act like you're the only one who's got it tough. I gave up my job for you, remember? Gave up your job? Please, you've made that into some kind of noble sacrifice. All you do is mess around all day while I'm stuck dealing with all of this." I gestured around the kitchen, my voice cracking with emotion. "And what's that supposed to mean? You think I enjoy having no life outside of this house? You think I like seeing you like this?" His voice was getting louder, more aggressive. "Having no life? You're out every other night, Jake. How's that having no life? And me? I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for any of it." I was shouting now, tears of anger and frustration welling up in my eyes. The argument spiraled from there, each of us hurling accusations and hurtful words until we were both too exhausted to continue. It was clear as day that the man I married, the family I thought I'd gained, they weren't the support system I'd hoped for. They were just another set of obstacles I had to navigate in this new, harsh reality of mine. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in my home shifted from uncomfortable to outright hostile. Jake's parents, who had once put on a facade of concern and affection, now treated my home like their personal kingdom, blatantly disregarding any semblance of respect or boundaries. Their behavior escalated quickly. They roamed the house as if it were theirs, rummaging through the refrigerator at any hour, taking food without so much as a "by your leave." The living room became their domain, the sofas permanently indented from their constant lounging. The television blared from morning till night, filling the house with incessant noise that grated on my nerves. I remember one afternoon, trying to catch a moment of peace, I asked them, yet again, to lower the volume. "Could you please turn down the TV? I'm trying to rest, and it's really loud," I pleaded, my voice laced with frustration. My mother-in-law, without so much as glancing my way, waved dismissively and replied, "Oh, stop fussing. The volume's fine. You're just too sensitive." Their audacity left me fuming, but nothing prepared me for the discovery I made one quiet morning. I decided to sort through my mother's jewelry, seeking a small connection to her, a moment of solace amidst the chaos. As I opened the cherished casket, my heart sank. The pearl beads, a precious keepsake from my mom, were gone. The shock of their absence was quickly overshadowed by anger when, later that day, I saw the missing beads adorning my mother-in-law's neck. I confronted her, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. "Those are my mother's pearls. How did they end up with you?" She feigned confusion, a poorly masked look of guilt quickly passing over her face, before she retorted, "Your mother's? Don't be ridiculous. These have been mine for years. You should be ashamed, accusing me of such nonsense." Her words stung, but they also solidified my growing suspicions about the kind of people I was dealing with. My discomfort turned to vigilance, and it wasn't long before I noticed other items missing: paintings that once graced our walls, expensive dishes that were part of my family's collection. Each disappearance chipped away at my sense of security, leaving me feeling more isolated and betrayed. The final straw came when I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law one evening, sneaking out with a large, bulging black bag. Her hurried pace and the way she glanced around, thinking she was unnoticed, spoke volumes. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Confronting her the next day, I demanded, "What was in that bag you took out last night? More of my things? More of my parents' memories you decided you're entitled to?" Her reaction was a mix of defensiveness and guilt. "You've got it all wrong," she stammered, avoiding my gaze. "I was just taking some things to donate." "Your accusations are hurtful and unwarranted." But her words rang hollow. The evidence was too damning, the pattern too clear. I was living with vultures, picking over the remains of my past life, my family's legacy. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, leaving me to wonder how I could ever have thought these people were my family. Lily, my beacon in the fog of deceit surrounding me, was more than just a friend at this point. She was my ally in a house that felt more like enemy territory with each passing day. During one of her routine visits for my massage therapy, which had become one of my few solaces, I finally broke down and shared my darkest suspicions about Jake and his parents. The weight of my words hung heavy in the air, thick with betrayal and fear. Lily's response was immediate, a mix of outrage and practicality. "Monica, we need solid proof. How about we plant some bugs in the house? Catch them red-handed?" Her suggestion, radical as it seemed, was a lifeline. Desperation had a way of making the unthinkable suddenly seem like the only option. So, we did just that. Lily expertly placed tiny recording devices in strategic locations around the house, her movements swift and unseen. The anticipation was torture, waiting for the right moment to listen to the recordings. When we finally sat down to review them, the sense of betrayal I felt was suffocating. Jake and his parents' voices filled the room, their words a testament to their greed and callousness. Jake's voice was the first to cut through the silence. "Once Monica is out of the picture, in that institution, everything here is ours. We'll live like kings." His mother's laughter was a chilling soundtrack to their scheming. That jewelry sale was just the start. We've barely scratched the surface of what we can make off her inheritance. And his father, always the quiet one, surprised me the most. Keep it down. We don't want her getting wind of this before everything's in place. But yeah, the sooner she's gone, the better. Lily and I exchanged a look of horror. The reality of my situation was worse than I had imagined. They weren't just stealing from me, they were planning to dispose of me, to erase me from my own life. I can't believe this. How could they be so cruel? My voice was barely above a whisper, the hurt and disbelief rendering me almost speechless. Lily, ever my protector, squeezed my hand tighter. We won't let them get away with this, Monica. You're not alone in this fight. But the question of what to do next was daunting. Confrontation seemed too dangerous, given their plans for me. I need to be smart, I said, the gears in my mind turning. They think they're playing me, but now we've got them. I need a plan, something to turn this all back on them. Lily nodded, her determination mirroring my own. We'll figure this out, together. They picked the wrong woman to mess with. As we plotted our next steps, the recordings continued to play, a grim soundtrack to our resolve. Each word from Jake and his parents fueled my determination to fight back, to reclaim my life and my dignity from those who'd so callously tried to strip it away. The dinner table that night felt more like a stage for a performance nobody wanted to attend. Jake and his parents, acting as though nothing was amiss, exchanged glances loaded with unspoken words. Their feigned ignorance was almost insulting. As we sat there, the chasm between us couldn't have been wider. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, the sting of their deceit cutting deeper with every secretive look they shared. Fueled by a mix of hurt and defiance, I turned to Jake, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Jake, look at me, I said, waiting until I had his full attention, his eyes finally meeting mine. Do you love me? Truly? His reaction was a beat too slow, his smile too forced. Of course, I do. You're my wife, he replied, the words sounding rehearsed, empty. That smile, meant to reassure, only served to confirm my suspicions. I smiled back, a hollow mimicry of his, a silent acknowledgement of the lies that hung between us. Waking up to find the ramps gone was like waking up to a nightmare. The realization hit me hard, without them, I was trapped, even more dependent on the very people who sought to control me. I confronted them at breakfast, my frustration boiling over. Why would you remove the ramps? How am I supposed to move around now? I demanded, my voice echoing in the suddenly quiet room. It's for your safety, dear, my mother-in-law cooed, her concern as fake as the pearls she claimed were hers. We're worried you might fall. This is for the best. Their words were a thinly veiled attempt to further isolate me, to clip my wings. I stared at them, their faces a mask of feigned innocence, and said nothing. My silence was strategic, a calm before the storm I was quietly brewing. Behind their backs, I made calls, reached out to the service for the disabled, and enlisted my lawyer's help. They arrived unexpectedly, a welcome intrusion. The shock on Jake and his father's faces was palpable, a mix of fear and disbelief as the team from the service began their assessment, immediately noting the absence of the ramps. My lawyer, ever the professional, wasted no time. We're here to conduct a thorough inventory check, he announced, his tone brooking no argument. An inventory was made after Monica's parents passed. We're going to verify that everything is as it should be. As the meticulous inventory unfolded, the stark reality of betrayal became increasingly apparent. My lawyer, a steadfast presence amidst the chaos, meticulously checked off each item against his exhaustive list, his professionalism a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil swirling around us. The absence of my mother's jewelry, my father's collection of expensive suits, the missing paintings that once adorned the walls with history and culture, antique dishes that were family heirlooms. Each missing item was a wound, a testament to the depth of deceit I was surrounded by. The in-laws, once so adept at weaving a facade of concern and familial warmth, found themselves cornered by the irrefutable evidence of their greed. Their initial shock quickly gave way to a desperate attempt at salvaging whatever they could from the situation. Tears streamed down my mother-in-law's face as she turned to me, her voice quivering. "We're so sorry, dear. It all just got out of hand. Please, can't we move past this?" Her husband, my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law, echoed her sentiment, his voice breaking under the weight of his guilt. "We never meant to hurt you. It was greed, foolishness. Please forgive us." But the time for forgiveness had long passed. I faced them, the weight of their betrayal heavy on my heart, yet my resolve unwavering. "Forgiveness? After everything you've done? You didn't just steal things, you tried to steal my dignity, my independence," I countered, my voice steady and strong. Turning to the police officers, I presented them with the inventory results and the recordings, undeniable proof of the in-laws' deceit. "These are the people you're looking for," I said, the finality in my voice marking the end of this chapter of my life. The court proceedings were swift, the evidence overwhelming. The judge's gavel sealed their fate, sentencing them for their crimes, mandating the return of what could be salvaged from their thefts, and compensating for what could not. Watching them face the consequences of their actions, a mix of relief and sorrow washed over me. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Divorcing Jake was a liberating, if painful, process. I also pursued compensation for the mistreatment, a legal acknowledgement of the suffering they had inflicted. Throughout the legal battles, my voice never wavered, my testimony a cathartic release of all the pain and betrayal I had endured. In the end, sitting in a wheelchair on the steps of the courthouse, a sense of closure enveloped me. The journey had been harrowing, a test of my resilience and strength. As I look back on the tumultuous journey I've endured, it's hard not to feel a sense of pride mingled with disbelief. The road to recovery was fraught with uncertainty, yet here I am, making strides, both literally and metaphorically, that once seemed out of reach. My legs, which doctors feared might never regain their strength, are now carrying me forward, step by tentative step. The sensation of pebbles under my feet, a once mundane experience, now fills me with an overwhelming sense of victory. "Your progress is nothing short of remarkable," my doctor told me during a recent visit, his voice tinged with genuine astonishment. It was a far cry from the cautious optimism he offered in the early days of my rehabilitation. Reconnecting with my friends has been a lifeline, their unwavering support a constant reminder that I'm not alone in this fight. "We're here for you, no matter what," they assure me, their words a balm to the scars left by betrayal. Jake, the man I once believed would stand by me through thick and thin, has become a distant, almost pitiful figure. Stripped of the financial windfall he so greedily anticipated, he now scrapes by, his calls and apologies a desperate attempt to claw back into my life. "Can't we just put all this behind us? Start fresh?" he pleads, his voice a mix of desperation and hope. I can't help but laugh, the sound rich with scorn and liberation. "Start fresh? With you?" I reply, my voice steady and confident. "That's a chapter of my life I've happily closed. You're just a footnote now." The flowers he sends, a pathetic attempt at reconciliation, find their way straight into the trash. "You think a few roses can erase your betrayal?" I scoff, discarding them with ease. They're a reminder of what I've overcome, not of what I've lost. In the midst of navigating this new normal, I've discovered a passion I never knew I had. Painting has become my sanctuary, a way to express the whirlwind of emotions that accompany my journey. An easel and a set of paints are now my most cherished possessions, allowing me to bring memories of my parents to life and to capture the beauty of the world around me. "This is how I heal," I explain to anyone who asks, my brushstrokes a testament to my resilience. My transformation is not just physical, it's a rebirth of my spirit. "They thought they could break me, but I'm stronger than I've ever been," I declare, with newfound determination. My story, once overshadowed by the actions of those who sought to exploit me, is now a narrative of triumph, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is light to be found. This chapter of my life, while born from pain and betrayal, is defined by growth, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the possibility of a new beginning. I am not the same person I was before. I am stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever comes next with grace and courage.
The distant wail of a police siren jolted me awake, my heart pounding in the dimly lit bedroom. I instinctively reached across the bed, only to find the other side cold and empty. Memories of last night's argument with Eric flooded back, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Rubbing my eyes, I glanced at the nightstand and froze. A plain white envelope propped against the lamp caught my attention. With trembling hands, I tore it open to find a note scribbled in my mother's handwriting. "Marla, we've decided to move on and start fresh. Don't try to find us. It's better this way." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. The air seemingly sucked out of the room. Start fresh? Without me? What about Luke? Panic gripped me as I scrambled to find my phone, dialing my parents' number frantically. No answer. I tried Eli's number. Straight to voicemail. Clara's phone went unanswered too. My mind raced, trying to make sense of this sudden abandonment. Had I done something wrong? Was this because of the fight with Eric last night? Questions swirled relentlessly, but no answers presented themselves. Stumbling out of bed, I made my way to Luke's room, my heart sinking further at the sight of his empty crib. They wouldn't. Desperate, I searched every room, clinging to the hope that this was some cruel prank. But the truth became undeniable. They were gone, taking my son with them, leaving me alone in this big, empty house. Sinking to the floor, I cradled the note, hot tears streaming down my face. How could they do this to me, to Luke? Didn't I deserve better than a cold, impersonal goodbye? Memories of my childhood resurfaced, moments when I felt overlooked and insignificant compared to the golden children, Eli and Clara. Eli with his charming ways and academic achievements basking in our parents' pride. Clara, the obedient daughter who could do no wrong. And me, the forgotten middle child, too rebellious, too questioning for their liking. But this, abandoning me like this, taking my son away without a word, it felt like a cruel betrayal, a slap in the face from the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. As the sun peeked through the curtains, its warmth offering little comfort, I knew one thing for certain. I would find them, and they would answer for this injustice. If they thought a measly note could erase years of neglect and favoritism, they were sorely mistaken. This was just the beginning. In the days that followed, I found myself sinking deeper into a pit of despair. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with a deafening silence that chilled me to the bone. Every corner, every room held memories of a life that no longer existed. I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into work, but even that offered little solace. The pitying looks from colleagues only served as reminders of my newfound solitude. Evenings were the worst, the emptiness creeping in like an unwelcome guest, taunting me with visions of happier times. Desperate for answers, I pored over old family albums, searching for clues that might explain my parents' inexplicable actions. As I flipped through the pages, a disturbing pattern emerged. A stark contrast between the beaming faces of Eli and Clara and my own sullen expression, often cropped or relegated to the background. It was as if I had been an afterthought, a mere bystander in my own family's narrative. Achievements that should have been celebrated were met with indifference, while Eli's every success was lauded as a triumph of parenthood. "Look at our brilliant son," my father would proclaim, his chest puffed with pride. "He's going to make us proud." And Clara, the ever-obedient daughter, could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" she'd chide me. "So well-behaved and focused." Focused on what, exactly? Pleasing everyone but herself? I had always been the one to question, to challenge the status quo, and for that, I was labeled the rebellious one, the black sheep of the family. One particularly vivid memory resurfaced, a Thanksgiving dinner from my teenage years. Eli had just been accepted into an Ivy League school, and the evening was a celebration of his achievement. As the family raised their glasses in toast, my father turned to me, his eyes cold and devoid of warmth. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" he sneered. "Maybe then we'd have something to be proud of." Those words cut deeper than any blade, leaving an invisible scar that never fully healed. In that moment, I knew I would never be enough in their eyes, no matter how hard I tried. As I slammed the album shut, anger coursed through my veins. All those years of neglect, of being made to feel inferior, had culminated in this ultimate betrayal. They had discarded me like a piece of unwanted baggage, whisking away my son without a second thought. A newfound determination took root, a burning desire to confront them, to make them answer for their cruelty. They would not get away with this, not while I still breathed. I would find them, and they would face the consequences of their actions, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed were a blur of anguish and anger. I found myself spiraling, consumed by the memories of a lifetime spent in the shadows of my so-called perfect siblings. Every slight, every dismissal played on a loop in my mind, fueling the flames of resentment. One particularly painful recollection stood out: my high school graduation. As I crossed the stage, diploma in hand, I scanned the crowd eagerly, hoping to catch a glimpse of pride on my parents' faces. But their eyes were fixed on Eli, who had just been awarded a prestigious scholarship. "That's my son," my father beamed, slapping Eli on the back. "He's going to make us all proud." My mother chimed in, "Yes, our brilliant boy. We're so fortunate to have him." Their words cut like knives, leaving me hollowed and invisible, even on what should have been my day to shine. Later that evening, as we celebrated with a family dinner, the conversation revolved solely around Eli's accomplishments and future plans. I tried to interject, to share my own hopes and dreams, but my voice was quickly drowned out by my mother's gushing praises for my overachieving brother. "Marla, dear, don't you wish you could be more like your brother?" she said, her tone laced with condescension. "He's going to do such great things." The implication was clear. I would never measure up, no matter what I achieved. In their eyes, I was already a lost cause, a disappointment. As the evening wore on, I retreated to the safety of my room, my diploma clutched tightly in my hands. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the once cherished piece of paper, now a cruel reminder of my insignificance. "Why bother even trying?" I whispered to myself. "They'll never see me, not really." In that moment, a part of me withered, replaced by a simmering resentment that would only grow stronger with each passing year. Even after I had Luke, my own child, my parents' favoritism persisted. While they doted on their grandchildren from Eli and Clara, showering them with love and attention, Luke was often an afterthought, a mere obligation. "He's such a fussy baby," my mother would remark, her nose wrinkled in disdain. "Are you sure you're doing everything right?" The implication was clear. I was a failure, even as a mother. As these memories resurfaced, I found myself consumed by a burning rage, a desire for vengeance that threatened to consume me whole. They had taken everything from me, my family, my son, my sense of self-worth, and for what? Because I didn't fit their mold of perfection? Well, no more. I would make them see me, even if it was the last thing I did. They would pay for their cruelty, for the years of emotional torture they had inflicted. And this time, they would be the ones left in the shadows, forgotten and insignificant. With a newfound determination, I began to formulate a plan, a way to make them truly understand the depth of their betrayal. Revenge would be mine, and it would be sweet. Just when I thought I had hit rock bottom, a glimmer of hope appeared in the form of my estranged Uncle Jack. I hadn't seen or spoken to him in years, not since the falling out he had with my parents over some long-forgotten slight. The doorbell rang one dreary afternoon, jolting me from my self-imposed misery. I shuffled to the door, half expecting it to be another debt collector or someone peddling unwanted wares. But when I opened it, there stood Jack, a somber expression etched onto his weathered face. "Marla," he said, his voice thick with concern. "I heard what happened." Before I could respond, he pulled me into a tight embrace, and something within me broke. The floodgates opened, and I sobbed uncontrollably into his shoulder, all the pain and anguish I had bottled up spilling forth. Jack ushered me inside, his strong, calloused hands guiding me to the couch. He listened patiently as I poured out the sordid tale of my family's betrayal, his eyes flickering with a mixture of sadness and rage. "Those bastards," he muttered, shaking his head. "I always knew they were twisted, but this is a new low." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of validation, of being truly seen and understood. Jack had always been the outsider, the one who refused to buy into my parents' illusion of perfection. "You don't deserve this, kiddo," he said, his voice laced with conviction. "You're worth 1,000 of them, and it's about time someone showed you that. In that moment, Jack became my lifeline, offering me a safe haven away from the suffocating loneliness of the house. He insisted I stay with him, at least until I could get back on my feet. No arguments, he stated firmly when I tried to protest. You need someone in your corner, and I'll be damned if I let those vultures pick over what's left of you. And so, with a heavy heart and a single duffel bag of belongings, I said goodbye to the home that had once been my sanctuary, now tainted by the ghosts of happier times. Jack's modest apartment became my refuge, a place where I could start to piece together the shattered fragments of my life. Over the following weeks, he became my rock, offering unwavering support and guidance as I navigated the turbulent waters of single motherhood and abandonment. He listened without judgment as I shared my deepest fears and insecurities, the wounds inflicted by years of parental neglect. You've got a strength in you, kid, he'd say, his eyes alight with pride. A fire that those fools could never extinguish, no matter how hard they tried. Slowly, with Jack's encouragement, I began to rebuild. I enrolled in night classes, determined to finish the degree I had abandoned years earlier. And as the pieces of my life started to fall into place, a new sense of purpose took root. A burning desire to not just survive, but to thrive, to rise like a phoenix from the ashes of my past. My revenge would come, not through petty vengeance, but through success, a resounding triumph over the doubts and limitations that had been imposed upon me for far too long. And when the time was right, when I had climbed to the heights they never thought possible, I would confront them, and they would be forced to reckon with the woman I had become. Strong, resilient, and unapologetic. The following months were a whirlwind of determination and hard work. With Jack's unwavering support, I threw myself into my studies, determined to make up for lost time. The late nights spent poring over textbooks and cramming for exams became a welcome distraction from the lingering ache of my family's betrayal. You've got this, kiddo, Jack would say, sliding a fresh cup of coffee across the table as I buried myself in research papers. Show those bastards what you're really made of. His words fueled me, igniting a fire within that refused to be extinguished. I was no longer the overlooked, underestimated middle child. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I would stop at nothing to prove my worth. As the semesters flew by, my grades soared, and I found myself drawn to the world of entrepreneurship. The idea of building something from the ground up, of carving my own path, resonated deeply within me. It was a chance to shed the shackles of my past and forge a new identity, one defined by my own ambitions and achievements. I want to start my own business, I confided in Jack one evening, my eyes alight with determination. Something that's truly mine, something they can't take away from me. Jack's face broke into a wide grin, and he clapped me on the shoulder. That's my girl, he said, pride evident in his voice. You've got the fire, the drive. Now it's time to show the world what you're capable of. With his encouragement, I began to flesh out my ideas, poring over market research and drafting business plans late into the night. The concept was simple, yet innovative, a service that would revolutionize the way people approached personal finance and wealth management. As graduation loomed, I found myself standing before Jack, diploma in hand, a triumphant smile etched across my face. This time, there were no shadows to lurk in, no overbearing expectations to weigh me down. This achievement was mine and mine alone. I knew you had it in you, Jack said, pulling me into a fierce hug. Now it's time to take on the world. And take it on I did. With Jack's financial backing and unwavering belief in me, I launched my fledgling business, pouring every ounce of my being into making it a success. The long hours and countless sacrifices were a small price to pay for the chance to forge my own destiny. As the months ticked by, my hard work began to pay off. Word of my innovative approach spread like wildfire, and soon clients were beating down my door. With each success, each milestone reached, I felt a sense of vindication, a silent victory over those who had doubted and dismissed me. But beneath the surface, a burning desire for retribution simmered, fueled by the memories of a childhood spent in the shadows. I knew deep down that true fulfillment would only come when I had faced my demons head-on, when I had made my family confront the consequences of their actions. And as my empire grew, As the accolades and media attention poured in, I knew that day was fast approaching. They would soon see the woman they had so callously cast aside, the phoenix that had risen from the ashes of their cruelty. And when they did, they would have no choice but to bow before the force of my resilience and determination. Revenge was no longer a fleeting desire. It was an inevitability, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of the life they had built on lies and favoritism. And I, Marla, the once forgotten daughter, would be the architect of their undoing. The years that followed were a whirlwind of success and validation. My business took off like a rocket, quickly becoming the go-to solution for financial planning and wealth management. Clients flocked to my innovative approach, drawn to the fresh perspective and personalized service I offered. As the accolades and media attention poured in, I found myself basking in the spotlight, a far cry from the shadows I had once inhabited within my own family. Each award, each glowing review, felt like a triumph over the doubts and limitations that had been imposed upon me for so long. "This is just the beginning, kiddo," Jack would say, beaming with pride as we celebrated another milestone. "You're showing those fools what they missed out on." And indeed, with each passing year, my success seemed to grow exponentially. My name became synonymous with excellence, my methods lauded as revolutionary. I was living, breathing proof that perseverance and determination could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. Yet, beneath the surface, a part of me remained unsettled, a hunger for retribution that could not be sated by professional accomplishments alone. As my empire expanded, so too did the nagging desire to confront the demons of my past, to make my family reckon with the consequences of their actions. It was during one of my many media interviews that the opportunity presented itself. The reporter, a seasoned veteran known for her hard-hitting questions, couldn't resist delving into my personal life. "Your success is truly remarkable," she said, her piercing gaze fixed upon me. "But what drives you, Miss Johnson? What fuels this insatiable ambition?" For a moment I considered deflecting, offering up the usual platitudes about hard work and dedication, but something within me snapped, and the floodgates opened. "Revenge," I stated, my voice steady and unwavering. "A burning desire to prove wrong those who doubted me, who tried to break me." The reporter's eyes widened, and she leaned forward, sensing a juicy story. "Care to elaborate?" And so I did. I laid bare the sordid tale of my childhood, the years spent in the shadows of my perfect siblings, the emotional neglect and manipulation that had left indelible scars. I spoke of the ultimate betrayal, the cold goodbye that had torn my life asunder and set me on this relentless path to success. As the words tumbled out raw and unfiltered, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The carefully constructed facade I had built, the mask of composed professionalism, crumbled away, revealing the raw, wounded soul beneath. The interview was a sensation, my candid revelations sparking a media frenzy. Overnight, I became the subject of intense scrutiny, my personal life dissected and analyzed by the masses. And then, like moths drawn to a flame, they emerged from the shadows. My estranged family, their once pristine image now tarnished by the harsh light of truth. It started with a tentative phone call from Clara, her voice trembling with a mixture of shame and desperation. "Marla," she pleaded, "we need to talk. They're not what they seem." I could sense the vulnerability in her words, the cracks beginning to show in the facade of perfection they had so carefully cultivated. "Talk," I scoffed. "About what, dear sister? About how you stood by and watched as our parents played favorites? As they systematically crushed my spirit and self-worth?" The line went silent, and I knew I had struck a nerve. But Clara was merely the opening salvo. Soon the calls and messages came pouring in, each one more desperate than the last. My parents, their once lofty pedestals crumbling beneath the weight of their own lies and manipulation, begged for a chance to explain, to make amends. And in that moment I realized the true depths of my revenge. It wasn't simply about success or triumph. It was about stripping away the illusion they had clung to for so long, laying bare the ugly truth for all to see. With a newfound sense of power, I agreed to meet them, to hear their explanations and excuses. But deep down, I knew that no apology, no justification could ever undo the damage they had wrought. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now they would reap the bitter harvest of their actions. And I, the once forgotten daughter, would be the one to deliver the final blow, the reckoning they had so long avoided. The day of the long-awaited reunion dawned, and I found myself a bundle of mixed emotions: anger, anticipation, and a strange sense of power. After years of being the overlooked, underestimated daughter, the tables had turned, and now they were the ones seeking my approval, my mercy. I had chosen the location carefully. A sleek, upscale restaurant in the heart of the city, a far cry from the cozy, familiar diners of our childhood. This was my domain, my territory, and they would be forced to play by my rules. As I strode through the doors, heads turned, whispers rippling through the hushed murmurs of the patrons. My name, once a mere afterthought, now carried weight, commanding respect and attention. And there they were, huddled at a corner table like errant children summoned before the principal. My parents, their once proud demeanors diminished, their eyes downcast and ashamed. Eli, the golden child, his once charming veneer cracked and worn. And Clara, her mask of perfection slipping, revealing the insecurities that had long festered beneath. "Marla," my mother croaked, her voice trembling, "we're so glad you agreed to meet with us." I said nothing, simply sliding into the empty chair and fixing them with an icy stare. Let them squirm, let them feel the weight of their transgressions bearing down upon them. "We owe you an apology," my father chimed in, his words hollow and rehearsed. "We've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and you suffered because of them." Eli nodded vigorously, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. "We never meant to make you feel lesser, sis. You have to believe that." I wanted to scream, to hurl the catalog of grievances I had compiled over the years directly in their faces. But I remained silent, allowing the tension to build, the discomfort to fester. It was Clara who finally broke, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as tears streamed down her face. "Please, Marla," she sobbed. "We need your help. We've lost everything, the business, the money, everything. You're our only hope." Ah, there it was, the true reason for this little charade, the desperation that had driven them to seek me out after all these years. Not genuine remorse or a desire to make amends, but the cold, harsh reality of their own failings. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, and I shook my head slowly, savoring the moment. "Help?" I echoed, my voice dripping with contempt. "After everything you've put me through, you have the audacity to ask for my help?" Their faces fell, the weight of their mistakes finally settling upon them like a oppressive shroud. "But you're our daughter," my mother stammered, grasping at straws. "Our flesh and blood. Surely you can find it in your heart to forgive us." Forgive them after years of emotional neglect, of being made to feel like an afterthought in my own family? The very notion was laughable. "Forgiveness?" I spat, leaning forward, my eyes blazing with barely contained fury. "You want forgiveness? Then you'll have to earn it, on my terms." The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with implications. They knew, deep down, that this wasn't a simple request for aid. It was a reckoning, a chance for them to atone for the sins of the past. "Anything," Eli pleaded, his once proud demeanor reduced to shameful groveling. "Just name your price." A cruel smile twisted my lips as I surveyed their pathetic, broken forms. The power, the control, was intoxicating, a heady brew of vindication and retribution. "Family counseling," I stated, my voice firm and unyielding. "All of us together, laying bare the ugly truths we've been carrying for far too long. And not just a few sessions, but a true, deep dive into the dysfunctional cesspool that spawned our so-called family." Their faces registered a mixture of shock and horror, but I pressed on, relentless. "And that's just the beginning. If you want my help, if you want a chance at redemption, you'll have to confront the demons you've been running from for years. Every slight, every betrayal, every ounce of pain you've inflicted upon me, it all comes to light. No more secrets, no more lies." The weight of my demands settled upon them, crushing and inescapable. This was their penance, their opportunity to bare their souls and face the consequences of their actions. "Well," I challenged, arching an eyebrow, "what's it going to be? Freedom from the past, or a lifetime of regrets?" In that moment, they knew. The tables had turned, and I held all the cards. Their once perfect family, the veneer of success and unity, had crumbled to dust. And I, the forgotten daughter, had risen from the ashes, a phoenix reborn, ready to burn away the lies and deceit that had poisoned us for far too long. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of confrontation and raw emotion. True to my demands, we began family counseling sessions, intense, no-holds-barred explorations into the twisted dynamics that had fractured us for so long. "Let's start at the beginning," the therapist said, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the palpable tension in the room. "Marla, share with us your earliest memories of feeling overlooked or neglected." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the onslaught of painful recollections that threatened to spill forth. Beside me, my parents shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with apprehension. "I was 7 years old," I began, my voice thick with barely contained emotion. "It was my birthday, and all I wanted was for my parents to be there, to make me feel special, just for one day." The memories came flooding back, raw and vivid. But instead, they were fawning over Ely, praising him for some academic achievement or another. I remember sitting alone in the living room, clutching my teddy bear, listening to the sounds of celebration from the other room. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but the therapist silenced her with a raised hand. "Let her speak," she said, her tone firm yet compassionate. And speak I did, unleashing a torrent of pent-up grievances and resentments that had festered for decades. Each memory, each slight, laid bare for all to witness. The time Clara received a lavish quinceañera while my 16th birthday went unacknowledged. The countless school plays and recitals where my parents' seats remained empty, their attention focused elsewhere. As the words tumbled out, I could see the impact they had, like daggers piercing the delusions my family had clung to for so long. Eli's confident facade cracked, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Clara, once the perfect daughter, dissolved into quiet sobs, her mask of composure shattered. And my parents? Their reactions were perhaps the most visceral of all. Gone was the smug indifference, the dismissive attitudes that had once been their armor. In its place, a raw, naked vulnerability, a dawning realization of the damage they had wrought. We never meant to make you feel that way," my father stammered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We were just so focused on their successes, we lost sight of everything else." My mother nodded, her eyes downcast with shame. "We failed you, Marla. We failed as parents, and there's no excuse for that." In that moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication, a twisted form of justice. For years, they had brushed aside my feelings, my very existence, in pursuit of their idea of perfection. But now, confronted with the harsh reality of their actions, they had no choice but to face the consequences. The sessions continued, each one peeling back another layer of the toxic familial onion. Resentments were aired, old wounds reopened, and through it all, a strange sense of catharsis began to take hold. But even as the healing process began, a part of me remained guarded, wary of their intentions. Were they truly committed to change, or was this simply a last-ditch effort to regain my favor, to secure the financial assistance they so desperately craved? The answer came during one particularly heated session, when the therapist broached the subject of their ultimate betrayal, the cold, impersonal goodbye that had shattered my world. "Why did you do it?" I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Why did you take my son away from me, without a word, without any explanation?" For a moment they were silent, their eyes downcast, ashamed. Then, in a move that surprised us all, Eli spoke up, his voice thick with remorse. "It was my idea," he confessed, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I was the one who convinced Mom and Dad to cut ties, to start over without the baggage of the past." The revelation hung in the air like a lead weight, suffocating and damning. "You," I whispered, my hands curling into fists, "you took my child from me, my own flesh and blood, because he was baggage?" Eli flinched, his body recoiling from the venom in my words. "I was selfish," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I wanted a clean slate, a chance to rebuild our family's legacy without the distractions of the past." In that moment, the floodgates burst open, and a torrent of rage and anguish poured forth. I hurled every insult, every curse at their trembling forms, my vision blurred by tears of fury. The session descended into chaos, the therapist's attempts to regain control drowned out by the force of my emotional maelstrom. And as the dust settled, a sobering realization took hold. There was no redemption to be found here, no path to forgiveness or reconciliation. They had crossed a line, a boundary that could never be uncrossed. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. With a heavy heart, I turned to face the shattered remnants of my family, my eyes steeled with resolution. This is over. I declared, my voice steady and unwavering. I gave you a chance, an opportunity to make amends, and you squandered it. Their protests fell on deaf ears as I rose to my feet, gathering my belongings. I don't need your money or your help, I continued, each word slicing through the tension like a razor-sharp blade. I've built something for myself, something real and lasting without your interference. And as I turned to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness, a lingering ache for the family I had once longed for but could never have. Goodbye, I whispered, more to myself than to them. And this time it's for good. With those parting words, I stepped out into the world, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The shackles of the past had been severed, the cycle of toxicity broken. My revenge, in the end, was not a grand act of retribution, but a simple act of defiance. A refusal to be defined by the pain and neglect of my upbringing. I had risen from the ashes, a phoenix reborn, and I would forge my own path, one unmarred by the sins of my family. And as I looked towards the future, a newfound sense of clarity washed over me. The past could no longer hold me hostage. I was free to embrace the life I had fought so hard to build, surrounded by those who truly loved and supported me. Jack's beaming smile and the innocent laughter of my son filled my heart with a warmth I had never known, a love untainted by the baggage of dysfunction and betrayal. This was my legacy, my true family, a bond forged not by blood, but by the shared triumphs and hardships that had shaped us. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, unbowed and unbroken, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. For I was Marla, the phoenix risen from the ashes, and my story was just beginning.